Turn with me to Matthew chapter 24. Verse 4. Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. The marker for the time of the end is wars and rumors of wars. There are 3 wars in the Middle East. 3 major wars. And this gives us a time frame of the revival, the end time move of God. Even though we see the beginnings of it before, the climax of it, the place where this is really manifested, the revival, is during this period between the first 2 wars, the first 2 Middle East wars. And the first one will be more of the immediate surroundings, such as Lebanon and Syria. And the next is Ezekiel 38-39, the Gog War, which includes Russia, Turkey, and other countries, and Persia and more in Iran. So it's a bit broader. It's not just the immediate neighbors, it's a bit broader. And then the third war is Armageddon. So these are the 3 major wars in the end. And we're very close to the first war breaking out. We've seen the blood moon in January, and this is a sign of war in Israel. And even yesterday, on the February 23rd, in the Debka file, we see Iran lays out a 16-point war plan for the supreme goal of toppling Netanyahu. And we see this war talk in the Middle East. And this is what it says, this one paragraph here. It says, if Netanyahu goes to war on multiple resistance axis fronts, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, he will end his shaky political life in the run-up to the elections. The elections on the 9th of April. And the truth is that ending Netanyahu's political life is Tehran's overriding goal, and it is ready to go to war to achieve it. In other words, what this article is saying, that this time up to elections is a time that if they were to stir up war with Israel, that this could topple Netanyahu, and this would be to their advantage. So we see a time period now, even up to April. I don't know the exact time. I think it will come very suddenly. But there's a lot of talk of war from the north, from the surrounding nations. And this would be the first of the 3 wars that I'm speaking of. And the prophecies, I'm taking the scriptures and also from modern prophets. And the modern prophets indicate that after this first war breaks out, that the grace of God will be lifted from the West. In other words, from World War II, there's been about 70 years of relative stability and peace in the West, in Europe, United States. And it's largely because of prosperity. And as this prosperity is lifted, there's an economic collapse. It begins in Europe, Japan, United States. As it spreads through the West, you'll see the stability leaves the West. And then you'll see what Matthew 24 spoke of. It says, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. You'll see this in Europe more with the yellow vests. You'll find more of an upheaval amongst the nations in Europe and even the United States. There's this civil uprising, is almost an internal revolution, almost a civil war that takes place in the United States. But you'll see this upheaval amongst the nations, kingdom against kingdom, and nation against nation. This occurs after the war, after this Middle East war. You'll see that the grace, the stability is lifted from the West. So these markers are very important, these wars. And the second war, the Ezekiel 38-39 war, let us look at what Dimitri Duduman, a well-known prophet, what he actually said about this. And this is also part of World War III. When that happens, it's a time of World War III. The Ezekiel 38-39 war is part of the Third World War. It says, God will raise up China, Japan, and many other nations, and they will beat the Russians. You see, Russia first attacks America and destroys the United States, is defeated and invaded by Russians and certain other countries. But after that, they're sort of brought to this peace treaty. They'll make a peace treaty back to the gates of Paris. Maybe it's near Versailles. It was a treaty in World War I, so maybe it's another treaty that's drawn up there at Versailles near Paris, at the gates of Paris. And this is speaking of World War III now. There they will make a peace treaty, but they will make the Russians their leader, and all the nations with the Russians as the leader will go against Israel. It is not what they want. It is not that they want to. God makes them, draws them to Israel. This would be the Ezekiel 38-39, not Armageddon. So Armageddon is very different. It's more with the Antichrist and the nations coming against the Antichrist, where here it's Russia leading a few nations into Israel. Quoting, Israel doesn't have the help of the Jews in America anymore. Why? Because America's been defeated. So now the Russians come down into, and the other nations, into Israel. In their terror, that's in Israel's terror, when they see what is coming, they will call upon the Messiah, and the Messiah will come to help Israel. So we see, this is Ezekiel 38-39, when God defeats these hordes led by Russia coming to the mountains of Israel. And then he says this, then the church of God will meet him in the clouds, 1 Thessalonians 4:16, in other words, the rapture. So what Dimitri Duduman is saying, that the rapture is around the time of the Ezekiel 38-39 war. In other words, what happens there, the time changes from the times of the Gentiles to the time of the Jews. That from the time of this war, the eyes of the Jews will be opened. They will see the hand of God in this, how God has delivered them from the enemies. And many will turn to Jesus Christ. There will be a spiritual awakening in Israel after this war. This is the second war. And the church can no longer be on earth at this time, because this is the dispensation for the Jews, the last 7 years. And let me just clarify that quickly. If we look at Ezekiel 39 verse 9, it says, then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and bucklers, the bows and arrows, the javelins and spears, and they will make fires with them for 7 years. So we see there's a gap of 7 years between the second war and the third war, which is Armageddon. And that's when the tribulation takes place between the second and the third wars. So we see actually Dimitri Duduman saying that the rapture takes place before the tribulation. He actually is pre-trib, because he's saying that then the church of God will meet him in the clouds, 1 Thessalonians 4:16. It happens at the time of World War III. There's a lady from Norway, in I think it was 1968. She said that the Lord comes just before World War III. Dimitri Duduman is almost saying that the Lord comes, the rapture occurs during World War III. So there's a slight difference in there, but it's basically around the time of World War III. It could be just before, but it's in that time period, because after that we have the tribulation and it changes the Jews, where before that, between the first two wars, this war that's coming right now and World War III, this is the time when the church is going to be here on earth still. And we need to look at this period. There's been much that's been revealed in this period. We won't be between the second and the third. We won't be here during the tribulation, but we'll be here before the tribulation, in this between the first two wars. And there's another vision or dream that I want to just go through by Dimitri Duduman. It was given to him in 1994. It's the 3 scrolls, and it's also about this period between these two wars. It was given to him in July the 1st, 1994. It was past midnight. I could not sleep because I felt inside that God was going to speak to me, so I began to pray. After I prayed, I went to bed and fell asleep. I dreamed that so it was a dream, not a vision. I dreamed that I began to hear thunder and light and see lightning. The earth began to move and shake violently. I yelled to my family, "Wake up, because something is happening outside." When I got outside, there was such a darkness that I could not see anything. Yet in that great darkness, I could hear the voices of children, women, and men screaming. I told my family to be careful of how they walked. From the clouds that released this darkness on the earth, I heard a powerful voice say, "I'm taking revenge against the sin. I'm taking revenge that they may see my power. With as much as I've blessed them, that is how much I will send destruction. I will send storms, heavy rains, flooding, earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes, because I want them to see my power and know that without me they can do nothing. They trusted in themselves and in their own strengths. This is why I will punish this place." The earth moved as if it were on water. The people lived in a complete terror, each one yelling louder than the other, not because being able to understand anything. The earth shook so violently that I was unable to walk. Suddenly, in the midst of all the tumult, a light appeared, more powerful than anything I'd ever seen. In the shining light there were 2 men. One of them said to me, "I came to talk with you. I will send great plagues over America, and I want you to be aware. I'm the one who talked with you in the past, and I'm talking with you now. I told you what will happen in this place. Be cautious, for the time is drawing near." That's just the first part of the dream. Before I move on, let us just look at this carefully. It's basically a dream of an earthquake. It says the earth began to move and shake violently, tremendous of a great earthquake. It says the earth moved as if it were on water. And this is between these 2 wars. This happens because what happens near the end of this first war, the covenant with many is made. It's confirmed after the Ezekiel 38-39 war by the Antichrist for a period of 7 years, but it seems to be made after the first war. That's what many of the prophets are indicating with this. The prophet Sundar Selvaraj also he indicates that this peace plan, this deal of the century, comes forth after a war takes place, and it seems to be the first war. And it is fairly clear with this, and God judges America, and that's when you see the tsunami, the great earthquakes, and then the plagues which follow. So between the first two wars, we actually see this starting to take place. But this is not the tribulation. The tribulation is between the Ezekiel 38-39 war and Armageddon. That's a 7-year period. So this is more the beginning of sorrows. And this is the picture of this dream. It's between the first two wars, of a picture of the great earthquakes which we haven't seen yet. And this is in the United States, in America. And it speaks of a tremendous darkness. And at the time of this earthquake, and some of the prophets indicated that when this meteor strikes near Puerto Rico, it will affect the rotation of the earth, that part of the earth will be in darkness for 3 days. And this would correspond to the darkness here, of a great darkness in the time of this great earthquakes. And it says here, I will send storms, heavy rains, flooding, earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. We've seen the hurricanes, we've seen some of the flooding, we've seen Harvey and what's been happening in the United States, but the earthquakes haven't come yet. That's between these two wars, the time of the great earthquakes. And this is the judgment on America, which begins during this time. And the context of it is a collapse of the dollar as well. And as I spoke earlier, it's an economic collapse which takes place in Europe, Japan, the United States. Eventually the dollar collapses, and it's raining dollars. That's the context of these earthquakes as well, from some of these other prophecies and visions. And also speaks of, I will send great plagues over America, that with the tsunamis coming forth and the earthquakes, what follows that is great plagues. And that's also what's in the book of what Jesus spoke of, Matthew 24. He said of pestilences. There will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes. And you see it all goes together. And the second part of the dream, he speaks of 3 scrolls. And this really references to the church during this time, between these two wars. There's 3 groups of people, basically. Each scroll is addressed to a different group of people. And let us just continue in the dream. It says, after saying these words, he took out a scroll which began to unroll very quickly. It was so long that I could not see its end. On this first scroll of paper were written all kinds of names. Beside each name was listed either punish, a type of disease, all kinds of were listed, a trial or torment. Those named will have to go through what is listed by their name in order to be cleansed and be able to stand. That scroll was then rolled up and sealed, and a second one was brought out. On it was written peace, joy, and the Holy Spirit, salvation or victory for those that loved me and worked for me and have kept their life clean, not for the hypocrites, the proud, the boastful, the hateful, nor others which I cannot recall. The scroll continued to pass by slowly before my eyes until it finished passing. Then a third scroll was opened, which had names written on it also. Yet there was something written only beside the names on the top half. From the halfway mark down by each name there were flashing stars. I asked what this meant. One of the men said to me, these are those with whom the number will be completed. The seed of God has reached their hearts and is even now working toward repentance. When the total number will be complete, all the devastation will begin. It's a very important sentence. Let us just stop here with this dream. It says, when the total number will be complete, all the devastation will begin. In other words, this is a devastation of World War III, and from the second to the third war, the tribulation. So there's a number of people coming in. It's a final number of Gentiles, people coming into the church, into the bride of Christ. When that number is complete, that's when the rapture takes place. But so in this period between the first two wars, we see these three scrolls. The first scroll is basically addressed to the Laodicean church, to the lukewarm church. And it says it's a very long scroll. In other words, many people are on the scroll, name listed on the scroll. And they've still got to go through punishment, through trials, through torments. In other words, they've got a refining that has to take place in their lives. And that's the Laodicean church. Some will fall away that won't respond to this, and that's when the great falling away takes place. The second scroll is for the remnant, the people that God's been working with for many decades, for many years before, and they've already been refined. And it's a very small list. The remnant's very small. It says the scroll continued to pass by slowly before my eyes, because it's a short scroll. There wasn't much on it, very few names. This is the remnant. So you've got a remnant, and they'll be protected from the plagues and a lot of what's going on. When you pass through the fire, you'll be protected, but that's only for the remnant. But the Laodicean, the first scroll, they will not be protected, and they will go through tremendous trials and torments during this period. And the third scroll is for those that God's dealing with, the people coming to know Him, and completing the number. That's the number of people in the bride of Christ. And the book of Romans speaks of until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. After the fullness of the Gentiles, and it goes back to the Jews, and that's the last 7 years. So it's the fullness, the number. It's all about the full number of people who are part of His bride. And when the total number is complete, then all the devastation will begin. That's when the tribulation takes place, which is from World War III onwards. So we get quite a picture here of what's coming. Romans 11:25-27. For I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness, or the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant with them, when I take away their sins. And this starts happening after the Ezekiel 38-39 war. When Israel sees God delivering them from the hordes from Russia, other countries coming against them without America's help, because America's defeated by this time in World War III. But when God delivers Israel from these hordes, this is when Israel turns back to God. And we even see a shadow, something before. Since 2011, we've heard this throughout the earth, certain strange trumpet sounds, almost like a blowing of a shofar, strange booming sounds throughout the earth. And that's almost like a shadow. It's almost telling us that these wars are coming. The shofar is often blown before a war starts in Israel. When there's a war takes place, these Middle East wars. And we've seen the blood moons. It's just telling us that these wars are about to start. They're very, very soon. So today I'm just bringing forth a bit more about the timing of the revival, because that begins basically between the wars. That's when it really, that's the climax. That's when the revival, the outpouring of the Spirit takes place. I'm just looking a bit more at the stream. And it says, until then I will send great plagues over America, that they may wake up from the sleep. And until then, that's until, let me just go back, the very last sentence was, when the total number will be complete, all of the devastation will begin. Until then, it's until the total devastation comes, until World War III. I will send great plagues over America, that they may wake up from the sleep with which they are sleeping, and from their self-reliance, that they may see their pride and boastfulness. It then began to rain ice and hail. The people were scattered all over, not knowing which way to go. From the terror of the screams, I woke up. The dream was so real to me that I went directly outside to see if it was not happening at that moment. And this is the dream from Dimitri Duduman. So we see with this earthquake, there's darkness, and then it begins to rain ice and hail. It's almost like the plagues of Egypt, with the 3 days of darkness, and there was a plague of hail, tremendous hail. And we seem to see that with the earthquake, the darkness, this tremendous event. And one thing also I think I should mention is David Wilkerson spoke of something rather unusual as well. This is the late David Wilkerson. I'm just moving to here where it says an urgent message. I'm just showing you how this also fits into this picture, because he also spoke of an economic collapse starting in Europe, Japan, United States, and this all just fits together perfectly into what was shown to him. And this is from 2009. It says, I'm compelled by the Holy Spirit to send out an urgent message to all of our mailing list, and to our friends, and to bishops whom we have met all over the world. An earth-shattering calamity is about to happen. It is going to be so frightening, we are all going to tremble, even the godliest among us. And for 10 years, I've been warning about 1,000 fires coming to New York City. It will engulf the whole megaplex, including areas of New Jersey and Connecticut. Major cities all across America will experience riots and blazing fires, such as we saw in Watts, Los Angeles, years ago. There will be riots and fires in cities worldwide. There will be looting, including Times Square, New York City. What we are experiencing now is not a recession, not even a depression. We are under God's wrath. And this seems to be, well, what is this referring to? If we look carefully at what the prophets have been saying, that this earth-shattering calamity, and David Wilkerson's, his prophecy has been very sound, and everything he said actually has come to pass. And I'm taking that this is actually is from God, this is true. And there's only one calamity that this could be, and this would be the meteor, the judgment on America, the meteor that strikes the deep impact near Puerto Rico. Because you see the first war breaking out, then there's this, not only there's peace amongst the nations, for example, Lebanon, Syria. Israel would have won this war, suffered quite a loss in the war, but would have won this war, gained much land in this war. But for the completion of the peace, they will also have a peace with the Palestinians, and that's where this deal of the century comes in. And in this peace, they will have part of Jerusalem will go to the Palestinians, so they'll have part of it will be probably the capital. And in the dividing the land, and America pushes Israel into this peace, into this division of Jerusalem, to have peace in the Middle East. And because of America's part in it, God judges America. And you see shortly afterwards, a meteor from heaven strikes. There's a deep impact near Puerto Rico, and this causes a tsunami on the east coast. And these great earthquakes, it almost splits America within the New Madrid fault, and certain of California falls into the sea, the west coast. So we see a tremendous great earthquakes, not normal earthquakes, but because of this meteor and very high waves with the tsunami, unusual things will take place. This is the beginning of the deep impacts. During the tribulation period, there are many deep impacts on earth. The book of Revelation speaks of this, but this is the first of the many deep impacts on the earth. And this seems to be the earth-shattering calamity that David Wilkerson is speaking of. It could be no other calamity. And why I'm saying this is because it affects, if you look at the context, he says that major cities, not only across America, are affected, but worldwide. There are riots and fires. In other words, there's tremendous fear amongst the people. Often when there's a calamity, within 1 hour of in major cities, you'll find all the food taken off from the shops. And so you see riots and fires, and people are, it's a worldwide thing. And something like this, it could only be this meteor event that would cause such a worldwide panic. And it speaks of 1,000 fires coming to New York City. In other words, looting, riots, and that's what this event would do. And it's quite frightening. Even those of us that have known or what's coming, that this thing, when it actually happens, it's of such a shocking nature that everybody will be shocked by this, even the people that the remnant that know about this. So it seems that what Wilkerson was speaking of here is also during this period between these first two wars, and it's a time of tremendous chaos in Europe. You'll see nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, riots, and that's when the one world government will be rising up, and tremendous changes will be starting to take place, and especially in the West. And that's what the prophets speak of, the grace being lifted from the West. So it's during this time of chaos that many people also will turn to Jesus Christ. And that's the time of the final revival. That's the time when this move of God, this final outpouring of the Spirit, the final harvest takes place. When the final number, the last number comes, and the bride already forms, and just before the rapture. So it seems like we're very close to this time for this breaking out. We're looking at the Middle East, and Iran are speaking of this war. It's from the north. They say they're ready for war, and even before the elections, they're looking at a war from the north, whether it's through Hezbollah in Lebanon, which they basically are just the puppet master with the strings, whether it's from Lebanon, Syria, from Iraq, or from Gaza. But probably from the north, the prophecies indicate there'll be missiles sent from the north, and then this will begin this major war. So we're very close to it. If we watch Debka File, you watch the Israeli newspapers, if you know what's happening in Israel, you'll know that this is close. It's not far off. And the prophecies also said the sign would be Billy Graham's death, which happened last year. We've seen Billy Graham's death. We've seen the final sign of the blood moons in January, which speaks of the war coming to Israel. So we're right at the time of this. And when this breaks out, then the world economy is going to collapse. First in Europe, Japan, then United States. I think David Wilkerson said when the first country collapses in Europe, after 2 weeks after that, the banks will be closed in America. You only got 2 weeks. That's what he said. It happens fairly suddenly, fairly quickly. And then we got these great earthquakes, a tsunami that comes through the East Coast. Many die in America. America becomes weak because of all those calamities that take place. And in this weakness, eventually Russia pounces on America in a place of weakness. And Russia with these other countries, they come in, and that's basically the fall of America, of the United States. But these things are very close. We're right at the time of this. So we need to watch these things. And I'm also not just giving you a bit of background with this, also with the revival and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. It's an important marker to know that many of the prophets have also indicated that things have started in Africa from January 2019. And so we see the beginning of things. But this is an important marker, these wars, because the main harvest, the main outpouring of the Spirit happens between these two wars. And it seems that it's imminent. It's very close to actually taking place. God bless. This is Apostle Derek from South Africa.